think we're live.
So this is the first Food Citizen Live that we decided to do. So Miram, Chingwei, and myself, we co-create Food Citizen, a social venture. And we decided to do this as a series where we discuss topics that is related to food, to nature, to people, as well as how individuals like ourselves who really want to see, how can we shape a better world, a more regenerative future? What is our role in shaping this future? So, in this series, we hope to be able to share our personal experiences and perhaps some tips that you can put to use in your daily life.
Great. Yes, today's topic, choosing to follow your passion. Now, for a change, we're not, or at least for me, I'm not going to be talking about compost. We picked this topic because the three of us get asked this question quite a bit, and we kind of figured that there are people out there who are probably going through some life changes and thinking of making a shift from, say, a steady corporate job to something else that is closer to their passion. And just because we get asked that question a lot, we decided that, yeah, it's something that we want to talk about tonight. And hopefully what we share, you guys out there will find it useful in your own way, like it may resonate with you. So yeah, do let us know in the comments too. My original career path. Well, actually, to be honest, I never planned to have a career path. I kind of have certain areas of passion. But after graduation from university, I ended up going into corporate. I think I'm a naturally curious person, so I started in web development as well as user experience design. So that captured my curiosity for a long time, and I stayed in corporate for about 15 years doing that kind of work. And my last job was a user experience design manager. It was extremely stressful. But what made me decide to change was I didn't recognize the stress in me because I could always take a lot of stress. Then one day, it was a few days before, because in Australia you have a like a holiday before at New Year. So after that, you have to go back to work. And that the day before I had to go back to work, I was under so much. I don't know. I was just like I realized that this is not how my life is going to be. I don't want to start another new year going back to a corporate job in the office. So without knowing what I was going to do, except that it wasn't this, I went back to work and quit. So that was how I started that new year. And it was perhaps the best decision I made for myself in a very long time.
We have quite few similarities, even though we are working in a very different career. So at that time, I was very, very lucky to be able to join as one of the youngest staff in an environmental consultancy that was just starting out in Singapore. And it is a multinational company. So over the years, it's grown from just 3 people. I was the staff number 3 to 200 over people. I think as I was in that particular job, I didn't think that I would quit. It just felt like this was a job that I'll be doing for the rest of my life. And especially in the earlier days, I really felt that it was a dream job that I was so lucky to get into. So along the way, I learned to make maps and work with data. And over the years, I found myself working more and more with data and maps to the point where I had my own team and I was actually teaching people in other companies. But I think there was something lacking for me because when I was doing data and maps, my main purpose was I wanted to tell people what's out there. And I wanted to tell people the good signs so that they can make good decisions. But because I was good at what I do, actually, I didn't get to go out anymore. I started to lose a bit of that sense of, this is really the job that I wanted over the years. And then I started doing a lot of passion projects outside of work. It got to a point where after about 4 years of doing all that, I found myself, yes, I'm working on huge climate change projects, which I really think that is very important. But at some point, I felt that, I was telling everybody to be environmental, to be sustainable, and I was not sustainable as a human being. I was really literally breaking down to the point where I felt myself, being lost in the forest mentally. And also feeling scared, feeling like everything's going to fall apart. I got to the point where I couldn't breathe. I got to the point where everything was just going wrong. So everyone around me, they could see that something was going wrong, but they couldn't help me. Doctors couldn't help me. Colleagues couldn't help me. People around me couldn't help. But then I got to a point where I eventually realized that, look, I think I need to get out of here. And I was so pleased when I finally made that decision. But at the same time, I was like, actually, I have no clue what I'm going to do next. But I'm just going to be getting out of here because staying is no longer an option.
Like, we have quite similar stories. So let's hear Miriam.
So a bit of background about myself, I like to share. Okay, when we were talking about job, I was just thinking, since I was a young kid, I remember when I was a P3 kid, I was always thinking about becoming a musician. Before I went into university, I tried to have a singing career in Hong Kong pop music scene. I tried, but of course I didn't try hard enough. The record company, they say, you better go study. We don't think you can make it as a singer. Then I was so devastated. But now, you guess what? Now I'm 40 plus. I was a jazz singer. I was able to find my passion. And I was in several bands. I got my degree in marketing. Then naturally, after graduation, I went into marketing. And I met my dream man. I met my husband. Then we got married. And then I got my dream job for a very renowned Fortune 500 entertainment company, which is really, really a dream company, dream job for most people. Then something more important actually appeared. It was my child. Then my child was very attached to the nanny, not me. And back then I was like pumping breast milk. I was having a most difficult time of my career. I was frustrated. Then I decided to quit. So that was a very long way to share my career as a mom. I think it is very important that I think about where I want to spend my time, my energy, which places, what things are, are the best use of the remaining time that I have. Like last time we said, what drives you? I say it's death that drives me, because I know ultimately we all have to die. Doesn't matter when, but it is your remaining time that you use and your remaining energy that you have to make a difference in yourself and in others.
So you left because you wanted to be a better mother. So you basically changed career in a way.
You will never regret becoming a mom. But sometimes I do wonder if I haven't left my job, my dream job, and I just continue to juggle my role as a mom, as a head of what company, then would I be super successful? I mean, in my career, some of the people who I used to work with, they're now VP of or president of a country. Of course, they are very accomplished people, but I look at my own experience that I had over the last 14, 15 years. I actually think maybe the kind of experience I have is more fun, more interesting. Yeah. More suitable for me, maybe.
I think that kind of brings us nicely to our second question, which is, did you end up following your passion instead of looking for another job?
For the first 30 odd years of my life, I didn't feel that I was truly alive and living. I felt, very separated from the rest of the world, very separated from people around me. I didn't feel understood. I think for me, the reason why I was on to so many passion projects even before I left my former job was that I finally found what is called conscious living and also being sustainable. And I felt that, even though I might be now about 40 plus, I felt like, I was just newly born. I just had this new second chance of living a life. And I really wanted to spend my time really truly learning how to live. When I left my job, I felt that, look, I was not functioning as a human being, let alone, truly living and living up to my fullest potential. So I left with the thought of I needed to relearn how to live my life. Also, before I left my former job, I started to kind of slowly learn to hear my own intuition. And my own intuition was talking to me in the form of pictures in my head. And I knew that I was on the right path. I knew that I was going in the direction that I wanted to go. And so I chose to continue on that path. So if I can just very briefly describe what that vision looks like, it was that when I was in the former job, I was very lost on a mountain. And I knew that I needed to get to another mountain. And I was super scared. But after I left my job, sometime later, I realized that I've gotten down that mountain and I'm now on a dark, dark path. It's like your forest path. You can hardly see what's in front. But I also knew that I was no longer scared. I knew that I was just there. I was exploring. I was slowly figuring out my way and knowing that I'm going in the right direction, whatever that might look like. So even though I was not necessarily very clear about, what that future might look like, I knew that I wanted to carry on.
I moved to Singapore a few years ago, and I didn't know anybody. I didn't have friends. Then I actively look out for friends. I go and I get to, because of the change of scene, I get to choose what I want to do, because it wasn't like before when I was placed somewhere, when a company accepted me and they tell me to work there. Nobody told me what to do, who to talk to, what kind of information I collect. Then I came across you guys. I love what you guys are doing. Going about teaching people, sharing all these important information, knowledge about caring for the earth. All these things that are around food that people have never thought about, and those are the things that resonate really well with me. And suddenly, it dawned on me, I want to be part of you. I want to meander this, walk around the forest together with you as we figure it out. Yeah, I really enjoyed what you just said. It's very important to me that, we understand that we are very small. We are still trying to figure it out, but it's good that we have one another. We have the same principles and values, and we want to go ahead together.
First of all, when I quit my job, I knew that I was never going to get another job. I actually thought myself, like, I've retired. I've totally unplugged from corporate. Of course, I didn't know what I was going to do next, but I knew the direction I wanted to take, which was to go back to what my heart wanted to do and not my head. So my head was all about, getting stimulation from outside, but I was neglecting what was in my heart. And my heart actually has nothing to do with corporate. When I was growing up, it was all about animals, plants, insects. I was out there playing outside, and I would be climbing a tree, that sort of stuff. So that was me growing up. And when I decided to quit corporate, I decided to go back there. How did I end up following this path? Was I just decided to leave the city and move to the country. That was the first step to reconnecting with nature. I was following my heart, and I didn't have a job for 10 years. So I was living in the countryside for several years, just growing things, learning how to be with nature. I became a certified permaculture practitioner, working on my own land. And it was all very well. And that was my passion. I was happy to be that. But eventually, I decided that I needed to expand. I needed to experiment more because I love experimenting, which is how I ended up back in Singapore. I was doing all that in Australia, and then I ended up back in Singapore. And I wanted to do social experiments in composting, to see if people are willing to separate their food scraps. That was like a very simple question that I asked, and I decided to carry it out. And I'm glad I did, because all that was all in line with following what was truly in my heart, whether it was the right thing to do or whether people knew what I was doing. I didn't care. It's as long as I got to have my fun experimenting. And that was how I ended up meeting Cuifen and eventually Miriam.
I remember you said you bought a piece of land.
Well, I wanted to be connected to nature. So the land was, even though it was a large piece of land. Most of it was zoned for wildlife, and the rest of it I kind of did, various experiments. I built some structures like or did or renovated an old milking shed, turn it into a mountain cabin, things like that. Every single thing I did during those years was because I wanted to experiment, and I was able to go ahead and do it. And the more I did it, the more I figured, why not? I just kept going. It was one experiment after another, and they were all good. And so on the outside, it looked like I was living my dream. And here's the funny bit, right? Is that I suppose here we are talking about following our passion, choosing to follow our passion. It all sounds like, yeah, we went through a very dark period, and then we suddenly went out, and there was this period of happiness because you've discovered what you set out to do. And so yeah, I got my dream, and then to be honest, I was miserable for the first 2 years on the land, surrounded by this beautiful forest and view of the lake, etc., etc. But I was actually miserable because when you follow your passion and you define your life, it brings on another set of challenges. And it was overwhelming because I've never lived in the countryside, and I just went and decided to do the jump straight away into the deep end. So that was when I kind of realized that you can have your dream and it can still be miserable until you change something. And that something that you need to change is yourself. And so, which is what I did. Because I think when you're creating a new life, as with all creation, there is always this chaos, this mess, and you're trying to figure yourself out. You're trying to find your footing. And the first couple of years of anyone finding, like living their dream or crafting their new life, is actually a scary time. And maybe that's why people kind of like sit on the fence and don't make the leap, because they can see that, they can feel the struggle. So what happened to me was, there I was feeling quite overwhelmed and miserable and stressed and thinking like, this is not very different from my corporate job. Um, and what changed was, one day I was sitting on the deck looking out at the forest going, this is such a lovely place. Why am I not enjoying myself anymore? And then I realized, because I studied French, and in French, to be in joy is the same as the English enjoy. So it's en joie. And I realized that I wasn't in joy. I wasn't enjoying my life, and I wasn't enjoying myself. So I better like put myself in a place where I can be in joy in order to appreciate everything that I've got, in order to appreciate this dream that I'm building. Um, and I suppose the good thing is, once I realized that, I started to not feel stressed, even though I had the same amount of workload trying to work on the land, trying to build structures, doing earthworks, designing stuff, um, planting things, growing my own food, all that kind of stuff. The same kind of workload, but I wasn't stressed anymore because I realized that I needed to enjoy it. So if I didn't enjoy it, I would figure out why. For example, I was pushing myself too hard, and I'll stop pushing myself hard, and I would just take the time to plant something. And as soon as I got into that place, things started to flow better and better and better. So when I was in this place of stress and thinking that I need to perform, maybe I was still in the corporate mindset, right? Corporate mindset, you have to perform. There are KPIs. So I was giving myself like KPIs on the land. And I had to shift that kind of corporate thinking. I realized that it was kind of ingrained in me. But once I did that, and I decided to use joy as a guide for myself, then joyful people came into my life, situations smoothed out, the energy just changed.
What you said really resonates very well, because in my corporate life, you measure your success and happiness with what title you have, how much money you get, how big your projects are, how big your budgets are, how
Mm,
many subordinates sucks up to you. So, suddenly after I become a full-time mom, I have none of those. So for the first few years as a full-time mom, I didn't earn anything. I don't have a title. When you go out and people ask you, what do you do? I'm like, I'm a mom. Then it doesn't seem to be like a legit kind of, status that you would link up your success to. So for a while, I felt like a failure because I have to ask my husband for money.
Mm.
And then what you said about joy slowly happened to me as I look for small wins, look for things that I enjoy. Now I still don't make much money. Sometimes I make money doing workshops, giving talks, but I still don't make money. But the way I measure my success is that I am improving every day. I'm learning new things. I'm helping others.
Now, for me, one of the challenges that I had was this idea of 9 to 5. Once I left the job, I sometimes feel like I need to work in the 9 to 5 and rest on the weekend. And my brain couldn't quite restructure itself. Either that or it just completely went off the 9 to 5 to the point where it's like there's no more structure. But what makes it so interesting, is there anything for you to look forward to? And I think right now I'm on the idea of routine, where I have a certain routine. And I needed to understand for myself that this would help me to build a more disciplined life in a good way that I truly appreciate, so that I can focus on the things that I really care about, and can truly function as a human being. Um, so nowadays my routine is where I have a morning routine. I have a certain focus activity in the morning and in the afternoon, and then I have a winding down routine. And I must admit that I'm not that great with all these routines, because everything that that I'm trying to do now is like I feel like I'm building, like you're building a house and you're trying to bring in the right bricks or the right structures, and you're slowly crafting it, slowly trying out, in a way, like Chingwei says, actually slowly experimenting to see what works and what doesn't. So a lot of ideas, maybe it sounds nice, but does it really work for me at this point of time? It's something that I'm slowly experimenting. So I felt
Okay.
that getting the better rhythm or routine for myself was a very essential thing, because it was like one of your major building blocks. And
Mm.
then my other building blocks was also deciding for myself that I'm in a period of transitioning. To some people, transitioning is just maybe a month, 3 months, 1 year. And for me, it's been 4 years, and I'm now into my 5th year. And I sometimes tell myself, hey, it's time to come out of your transition. But I felt that, being accepting the idea that I am in a transition, able to slowly experiment and also slowly craft out the path that I want to take, I think that is a very important one. I think one of the things I wanted to say is how I realized that a lot of the things I used to enjoy doing before I left my job, um, after I left it, I actually stopped having the interest in them, or I wasn't particularly very motivated to work on them anymore. I struggled with the fact that I no longer feel very motivated or energized when I do them. So it is a constant struggle that I still face. That knowing that helps me to evaluate also what I say I want to do.
I'm sure people also understand, as creators of social ventures, we have lots and lots of challenges that we face daily. And what we have to do is to really believe in ourselves and continue to look for the adventure ahead of us, and believe in us every day. Look for small wins. I was hoping to go briefly into explaining what the three of us have been doing, because this is very important.
Okay, well, I'll go. So if we think about food, right? One of the things, like the land of milk and honey, for example. So the land of milk and honey, immediately people, when you hear such a phrase, what conjures up in your head is lush meadow, cows grazing, there are beehives buzzing and the flowers nearby, and therefore you get milk and honey. So that's food for people. But what actually creates that environment is an ecological stability. It's a healthy ecosystem that eventually gives the humans food, such as milk and honey. So for me, before we can even talk about food for ourselves, we need to talk about the ecology of our space and how we share it with other organisms, because they are creating this web that we are a part of. And only if the web is healthy and intact can we have food for all. So that is why I'm really in Food Citizen making compost, because essentially compost is food for the soil. And when you have healthy soil, a lot of good things come from that, including human self-awareness. So that is what I see for myself, my work in Food Citizen, is that I think it's I love the name. I think that we all should be food citizens of some sort, and that food is such a wide and complex topic that there is room for everybody. So that's just me done with talking about Food for Earth. Let's move on to Cuifen and Miriam.
I just wanted to say, for those who are not familiar with us, and as a relatively newcomer to Food Citizen, I think both of you, Cuifen and Chingwei, are real gems, gems, for both, for Singapore and for the world, because of
that's big.
what you. I mean, to me, I observe what you do day by day, because every day you're either in a compost site, or you are teaching in a school, or you are going to a community center teaching, talking about, soil, the health importance of soil to the survival of all the species in the world. So, I mean, if we don't think about soil, what do we have? I mean, if we don't have healthy soil, we don't have anything to eat, and we will all suffer. So that is why being advocates and doing what you do, I think, is very, very important. And
I want to mention about how I see food for people and for self. I would go around Singapore looking at Singapore through the lens of food. So I was looking at farmers, I was talking to like wholesalers, caterers, chefs, home cooks, community kitchens, community workers, people who do not have enough food, people who fall through the cracks in society and rely on rations, single moms, kids, and migrant workers, construction workers, all that. When I go to the ground and I actually talk to the people, I could see that there are very different maps, there are very different issues that come up. So that motivated me, especially when I do my passion work, is to look at communities at the neighborhood level, to explore food issues, and to also get people to explore our neighborhoods through the lens of food sustainability, social justice. So I feel that this is where the three of us, we bring our own backgrounds, perspectives, and passions in various areas when it comes to food. I think that's where we and also other people who we would love to collaborate would be able to share our learnings with you.
I would love to go into the comments first. So Rachel Blasky, thank you so much for your first question. I really, really appreciate that you're interacting with us. She asked, how do you all tackle the financial aspects while pursuing what you are doing now? We actually discussed this repeatedly. Okay, so it is difficult to generalize because everyone has different financial situation. So I share from my own perspective two things. First is, since I haven't been working for so many years, and I think having my own money to spend, not having to ask for money, is important. So that's why I appreciate Food Citizen welcoming me as part of one of the co-creators, where I have a platform so I can go and teach things that I feel important, and that it fulfills my goal, but at the same time, it helps to give me some income. The second sharing is, of course, the money that I make at this platform is not enough. So we are working on it, discussing how to price ourselves, our workshops, and also getting more, having more partnerships. And just now we were talking about, Food Citizen being a platform. So, and Cuifen, you were mentioning about partnering. I think it would be great if we can have, get to know more people who are in this similar field, and we, group them together and then have a bigger reach
I think for myself, especially when I quit my job, I was actually panicking for the first few days, because I realized that I have no more money coming in. Because I didn't want handouts from my family. So I think I was very lucky to have by that time saved up some money. And that was enough, I knew, to at least last me for a year or more. And thanks to the work that we managed to do at Food Citizen, even though we did not necessarily price ourselves to really make a profit, I managed to, earn enough, not just from Food Citizen, but from other opportunities, to the point where I'm like, oh, I can do this for another year. And what I mean by doing this is that we are not necessarily doing workshops and talks every other week. We are not always offering, like, we do this and that all the time. So the income that we get from Food Citizen is actually is very occasional in that sense. But what I mean by doing this is that I get to do my own regenerative life, where I spend my time doing passion projects, doing exploring, learning, and then with all the learnings that I gather and master, that's where I get to do the workshops and talks. And I find that very meaningful. It allows me to grow as I grow others as well. So as long as I can sustain for another year, it gives me that freedom. And sometimes I do wonder that should Food Citizen actually so-called earn enough money, or have more funds, that we could actually have someone to really run it as a business, so that we are more functioning. And sometimes I think that that might be a very useful thing to do. But right now, I'm really enjoying being able to do this rather organically with these two ladies.
A lot of times, these kind of work where we work with nature, or we work with farming, or that kind of stuff, it seriously does not pay much. So that's why nobody wants to go there, because we're all in corporates, like trying to do all these make money, have a family, support whatever lifestyle that we want. So but I kind of decided that, well, I do have some personal money. Instead of like trying to buy another house or whatever, why don't I go and try this way of living, this way of learning, and see where it takes me. So at the moment, like what Cuifen and Miriam have shared, we don't make much, because we would be running ourselves to the ground if we had to give workshop every day just to make enough to live and pay for our daily living expenses. So I'm able to do this because I have funds set aside that supports me in doing this. But having said that, I think what we're doing here is that there is a new shift coming in the world. And more people are moving into this area where we're doing more for the earth. And yes, it doesn't pay much and it's super scary. But I think kind of like we are like spearheading, or we're like the pioneer, or we're like the beginning of this. And there isn't an industry yet, right? But
Mm.
but if we persist and we keep holding the space, and being able to do so, because we each have ways of supporting ourselves outside of Food Citizen, and lucky that we have that. I'm really appreciative of that. Eventually we'll get somewhere. This is just the start. Like when you start to define a new world, lots of things haven't fallen into place. And we three just happen to be crazy enough to go and join this new world in the midst of all that chaos and whatever. And there's a lot of exhilaration and excitement too, along with a lot of fatigue and a lot of like, oh, maybe I shouldn't spend so much because there isn't not a lot of money coming in, or maybe I look. It does not matter. It's just like we chose to be in this new kind of world.
I really appreciate what you said, that it is increasingly more people are not going to spend their time and energy and career in building a corporate job, in building somebody else's company, but building your own path, your own career, be it your own brand or your own knowledge, your own connections. Yeah, it's all about where you want to focus your life on, your energy. I talk a lot about protecting your energy. It's a conscious choice we all three of us made. We want to build something that is meaningful to us, and that is to focus on the earth the values that are important to us.
It's no longer about time management for me. I think I used to talk a lot about time management. It's actually now energy management. So
Yeah.
it's more about if you have this amount of energy, like what would you choose to do?
Absolutely.
So yeah, thank you, Rachel, for your question, and also Ann Siu Kim Lim. Thank you so much.
Oh, hi,
Yeah.
Anne.
Thanks for joining
Lovely.
us, Rachel and Anne and others.
That's
I
what
like what
Rachel said.
Rachel wrote.
Like, that's absolutely how I've been living my life the last 10 years, Rachel, is like go with the heart. And just instead of your head. Maybe that's not very good advice, but it worked for me. It's just like whatever
Maybe not
floats.
in the corporate world, but outside
Yeah.
in
Yes.
life. Yes.
Is it okay if I just jump quickly to share
Sure.
my highs?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay, so it's also tied to one last thing I want to share with the audiences here is if I have to say one thing, I would like to say something to people, to mummies like me, who are stay-at-home moms. You don't make a living, or you make very little living, and you're having, you're struggling a little bit. You're having a bit of like midlife crisis, and then like last night I was having a discussion with my mom, like, why am I doing all this YouTube thing? Is it paying any money? Is it giving you too much stress? Is it useful? Are you doing anything significant? It doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be significant right now, but it has to be significant to your heart. What you need to think about is not who you are today, but who you are in the future, because you're moving towards the future you. Don't get bogged down by who you are right now. Who you are could be carrying a baby, breastfeeding all the time, you don't get enough sleep. But think about what kind of life you would want to live, and follow your heart, just like what you said.
One thought was I realized that all my decisions were not made with joy. So it actually came to me as an aha moment that, I need to start making decisions where I bring joy to myself and not just focus on other people. Another moment of, wow, this is something amazing, is where I realized that, I experienced some conflict, and I was actually being able to so-called parent my inner child and just sit there and go, ayo sayang, it's all right. And that's something I would never have done a few years ago. And I just felt that, hey, I'm kind of growing up in my own way, where I feel that I'm resolving some of my inner younger childhood hurts, and learning how to grow up. And I guess for myself, it's also feeling a sense of accomplishment. And I reached a point where I feel that I wanted to start to grow as an artisan, especially when it comes to composting. And I know that a few years ago, I started using the word compost maker. And I started thinking about the artisan a few months ago when I started realizing that, hey, I know how to do this. Now I can actually select special recipes and I can kind of make special compost. Why not?
Well, mine is really simple. Like, whatever you do, as long as you're using the feeling of enjoyment and being enjoy, I think you won't go wrong. It's truly your inner guidance. If something gives you, yeah, go for it. If something gives you joy, go for it.
Okay, really, really appreciate all the comments today from Anne. And also today we have quite a number of people joining from all three channels tonight. Yes, and I would like to ask that if you guys don't follow us yet, please follow us on Facebook and Instagram. I also have our Facebook QR code on the corner. Yeah, and then if you have further questions, please write in the comments, or you want to say something. If anything resonates well with you, and you want to encourage us, do remember to reach out and write your comments. Yeah, and then by the way, this is our first time doing live. We are still trying to figure it out, but it certainly brings us joy, right? And we hope to do more. So stay tuned on YouTube, Food Citizen Life.
We cannot see our audience. It'd be very nice to hear from all of you. So if you can either comment or reach out to us, it'd be very nice. We would appreciate it.
Thank you. See you
Thanks. Good
again.
night. Bye.
Bye.
Bye bye.